Tricia Dege and I spoke back in the fall, probably, I don't know, maybe it was even summer, when we started putting the December session together. And again, Doubt to Dominance, and we spent a chunk of time talking about imposter syndrome and some other topics there. A lot of questions that we didn't get to. We wanted to have this be a little bit more of an audience participation session, so that is why Tricia and I pulled today together. I'm going to let Tricia introduce her wonderful group of panelists, and Tricia is the CEO of Mom Mastermind, a women's leadership development company, and now regular at Club E, having done this twice. So Tricia, welcome, and thank you for pulling today together, and the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. And thanks to all of you for attending today, especially those of you who are back again to entertain this discussion. Thanks to Rick for having us. We chose this topic, Doubt to Dominance, I think because it resonates with some of the journeys that we've been on as entrepreneurs, that fortitude that's required personally and professionally to go out there and do the things that we're passionate about. And so first, I'm just going to recap what we talked about in December for those of you who are here, just to jog your memory, and those of you who weren't, to catch you up. So we started by talking about the fact that 70% of people fear being exposed as a fraud despite evidence to the contrary, according to the Journal of Behavioral Science. So when you're feeling that doubt, especially on your entrepreneurial journey, know that you're not alone, and we talked a fair amount about that. We also talked about entrepreneurs needing to spend, especially at the beginning, about 40% of their time doing tasks outside of their specific passion area, and the grit that's required to do that and to learn and to grow in new and different ways. And then we talked about the reality that 90% of startups fail, 10% of them fail in the first year, and the need to really get out of your head about that, get into the planning and the executing, to remember your entrepreneurial passion, to think about shared strategic visioning, and to learn from mistakes, both yours and others. And then we also talked about some hurdles, that 82% of businesses that went under did so because of cash flow problems, and the need to be very cautious about your financials and have your funding strategy well in place, and the fact that 23% of startups cited internal issues and the need to really be cognizant and thoughtful about the culture that you're building. And then we wrapped up with this gem of a quote from Forbes that says, "The best way to learn more about entrepreneurship is to start a company." So just dive right in, jump on in the deep end. And so hopefully that jogs your memory or catches you up if you weren't here before. We concluded in December with a lot of hands still in the air, and so thank you, Rick, for inviting us back. There were a number of topics we didn't get to, and so we've left a lot of time for Q&A today. I'm going to mention a few to kind of get you thinking. We did not have a lot of time to talk about growth strategy or exit strategy. We didn't spend as much time as we'd planned on managing a team and culture. We didn't get to networking, business development, and support structures, and we did not talk at all really about that juggling act between home and work. And so we'll start by introducing ourselves while you get your questions ready, and I'm going to have each of the panelists, and we'll start to my right with Nikki. Introduce yourself and share with us what makes riding the entrepreneurial roller coaster worth it for you.
Hi, I'm Nikki Rohloff. I am owner of Rohloff Associates and Canopy Accounting. So we're a CPA, fractional CFO firm, and then the Canopy Accounting is specifically targeted at the cannabis industry. And so looking to get into that. I started the firm back in 2017, and it has been a wild ride. Definitely the flexibility of being able to be an entrepreneur. I have 2 young kids. My husband's also an entrepreneur, so like raising them with that mindset of kind of having, there's really great parts about being an entrepreneur, but the worst part about it is kind of at the end of the day, the buck stops with you. So our kids are very well knowing that sometimes we have to do extra work, sometimes we can't attend all of the functions or all the things, but then there's the flexibility that it gives you to be able to grow and to really kind of start their own thing as well. But what I love most too is, since we work with a lot of entrepreneurs, is just hearing everybody else's stories, helping them hit their goals and reach their milestones that they would like to do.
And hi, I'm Heather Bosche. I'm an accidental entrepreneur. Now I have 2 businesses, so the joke is definitely on me. I do both marketing, services, fractional work, and strategy. And then I draw fat birds, and I put them on things and make children's books out of them. And I think there's 2 parts of the roller coaster that I like best. And the first is the growth. I think that being an entrepreneur is like the biggest journey in self-discovery ever. I spent 20 years in corporate, and corporate, the growth is very linear. And in this world, it feels exponentially expansive in every direction. Whereas I was kind of in my marketing box in corporate, and the number of times I was told to stay in my lane. And now I'm doing finance and operations and business development, and I love it. So the growth part is huge. And then the other piece is I feel very untethered to rules. And I am a rule follower, and for the lawyers in the room, I'm still in the confines of the law and ethics. But I just feel again, being told to stay in your lane, and I had a box I had to stay in. Now I feel there's no lanes. It's like a big super highway, and I get to make the rules. So I get to decide if I want to add a service or drop a client or pivot completely or change my prices. And so the freedom that comes with making your own rules along with the innovation is just the most fun.
And I'm Tricia Dege, and 2.5 years ago I started a women's leadership development company, and I came out of healthcare, and I was a CFO, so this was a very intentional, different turn for me. Always been really passionate about leadership development, and I think the thing that makes it worth it for me is the ability to be a counterforce in the market. So I think there are a lot of voices that portray women as less than or beleaguered or put upon, and my job is to work with businesses to help them engage and empower themselves and continue to rise up to the C-suite. And so seeing leaders take those steps every day, super passionate about that, and just a reason to ride the roller coaster as fast and as far as it goes.
Hello, I'm Katie Klug. I am not an entrepreneur. I work at Bridgewater Bank, but I primarily work with entrepreneurs. So thank you for having me here today. I have a bit of a different perspective. So I've been in banking for a little over 20 years, and I've realized now that I'm on the my gray hair is showing. I'm on the older end of. I thought I used to be young, and now I have more gray hair than I used to. But at Bridgewater, I am responsible for the deposit side. So my teams that I work with are our branch teams, and then our folks working with our business clients, helping them on their deposit side, making their banking a little bit more efficient. And so for me, the roller coaster looks a little bit different, but what makes it worth it for me is helping my clients and the bank be successful, and seeing the growth when I'm working with both my clients and my team members at the bank is what helps me get up in the morning. And being in a leadership role has been very valuable. Being able to help our folks at the bank move into their full capacity and push them and push their potential has been really rewarding for me. And then also being able to go home. I have 2 little kids at home as well. One preteen daughter, so we're getting into the attitude phase at my house. But being able to show my kids what hard work can get you, I think is very valuable as well.
Awesome. And I'm Stacy Kupsky. I own Wayzata Bay Private Wealth Management. So we're a private wealth management firm in downtown Wayzata, as the name essentially alludes to. So we've heard a lot of great things across the panel. My business is primarily derived on helping people take money and see it as a tool and a fuel system to help live their life by design. And that is really the center stone of the 2 reasons that I love being an entrepreneur, and why I elect to get on that roller coaster every day, even though it makes sometimes your stomach turn, especially in my world where the market is its own roller coaster in and of itself. So you are not only an entrepreneur and a business owner, and you're dealing with payroll and staff, you're also dealing with another element of activity within that dynamic. So I do it for two reasons: the time autonomy and the ability to really create the life that I want by design. And I did not have a lot of archetypes of women in my life that were owners and stepped into that role. So I think the ability to show more women and young girls that this is possible and that you can own something, and women are innately leaders, and how to lean into that. And we might lead companies differently, but that still means we are needed, and an idea needs to be brought to this earth, through a woman. So that is one element, kind of the stability side, once you build it, right? It's rocky at first, but once you build it. And then the impact that we get to make each and every day, from the clients that we serve, to helping them live out their best life, right? That is really something you can put your head on the pillow and say, look who I helped today. Look how I helped them make a difference. I helped them get through a pain point in their business, or this family is able to retire, or they're able to sell a business. That is exceptionally impactful and exciting as what I do, so.
Awesome. So we're going to do two questions before we go to your questions. And the first one is, what's one situation you've encountered a lot of doubt, and how did you push through it? And so I'm going to have Heather and Katie on either side of me answer that.
Do you want to go first?
I can go first, sure. Okay, so I was thinking about this, and I was going through my phone yesterday, and I was like, how many times have I texted somebody, fake it till you make it? Turns out a lot more than I probably should have. So I'm telling myself this advice as well, like this whole imposter syndrome, and I need to get better at it. But a situation for me, so I've been at Bridgewater Bank for 6 years, and when Trisha asked this question, what came to mind for me was, prior to coming to Bridgewater, I was at an organization for almost 18 years. I had left and come back, and so I was happy, but I was probably a little complacent too. And I'd been introduced to somebody at Bridgewater, and they were like, hey, we have this great opportunity. We want you to come have a cup of coffee. And I'm like, no, I'm fine. I don't need to. I'm super happy. Everything's great. And just come have a cup of coffee. Okay, fine. So I did. And as they're talking to me about this opportunity, I'm like, wow, that is 100% what I want to do, but there's no way I'm qualified. I can't do that. You need to find somebody else. There's definitely somebody in the market that's better than me for this job. So I was like, thank you, but they're not going to call me back. I'm like, oh, it's a good cup of coffee. You guys are great. Maybe someday you can hire me for like a few positions lower than that, right? So then they call me back like 2 days later, and they're like, hey, we want you to come back. You got to come meet with our CEO and come back. And I was like, are you sure? Are you sure you have the right person? Like checking my phone. Did you call the right person? And so that was a big hurdle for me. And retrospectively looking back, I'm glad I took the opportunity. I'm glad I pushed myself. I have since then been trying to work on my own confidence. And I think some of that, for the ladies in the room, women tend to doubt themselves more than men, especially with new opportunities that may come across your plate. And so as I've been trying to work with younger, especially women in their professional careers, it's worth having a cup of coffee with somebody. It's worth having the conversation and pushing yourself to grow and building your own confidence along the way, because turns out I'm extremely grateful and thankful that I took that opportunity, and it's been just an amazing last 6 years, and I've grown a ton professionally and personally because I took that risk. And fortunately, I had a lot of people pushing me in that direction too, so without my network and the folks that helped me get there, yeah.
And okay, here's the thing with doubt. Like everyone has it. Like everyone has doubt. And if you have doubt, congratulations, you're human and not an AI bot, which we are all going to be in 10 years. And so what is doubt? Like doubt is just a feeling. And what do we do with feelings? We feel them. And so I think about every day I have doubt. Even before coming up here, I'm like, what the hell do I know, right? It's like, but you feel your feelings, and this is what I do. So there's two things I do. One is I have inner dialogue with myself. The first is when the doubt comes in, what do you know? Should you do this? I don't know, maybe you shouldn't. First of all, I say in my mind, thank you for showing up, because doubt, our minds want to protect us, right? Because if we never make any moves and we always stay in the same place, theoretically, in our mind, we are safe. So doubt wants to keep us safe and secure. So it's like, thank you for trying to protect me, but I'm good because I've got the receipts. I've got 20 years of experience building teams, leading initiatives, driving results. I now have 3 years of finding clients, keeping clients, building businesses with people. Like, I know what I'm doing. So thank you, but I'm good. And it doesn't mean that it doesn't show up. It just means that the impact is less and less. Like that conversation happens in my mind in a second. But I don't just like swat it away. I have to like feel the feelings and tell it, thank you for showing up. I know you're trying to protect me, and now you can go. The second thing that I do is I talk to people. So I very vividly remember when I first started my business and I was working on my first proposal after Googling what to put in a proposal. And I remember looking at my screen and thinking, who's gonna pay me to do anything? I don't have a brand name associated with me anymore. I'm not with Verizon, I'm not with Radisson. I made up a company name and it's just me. And then I talked to a small business owner and we had a conversation where he shared his issues, I had ideas, I asked questions, and coming out of that conversation, it was like, I know what I'm doing and I add value. And so talking to people reminds you of everything that you've done. So between feeling your feelings, and telling doubt and reminding doubt of the receipts you've collected over the years, and also going out and talking to people, that is a beautiful double-sided fly swatter for doubt.
Yeah, one of the other things that I would pose, kind of the opposite of this question, is too, and in this Twin City Business had a convening of women in leadership recently, and I was watching some of the tape. And it's okay to own when you don't have the doubt anymore. When you've risen to that point where you know that that's not you, that you own the seat, you've earned the seat that you're in, that's an okay place to be in too. And sometimes I think we have to acknowledge that we've been down that road and we're not that person anymore. We've earned the seat, earned the right to have the voice, say the thing, build the thing, own it. So maybe along that line, what is the number one success factor for dominance in business? We'll go Stacy and then Nikki.
Yeah, it's hard to bring it down to one thing, right? But if I were to boil it down to what helps business owners succeed, it is honing that skill, whatever that one skill is, and maybe it's multiple skills, but there is one thing that you need to be focusing on in this season, right? So we're leaning into our talents, we're leaning into what our business really can provide a benefit for to our clients, right, to society, and we're really honing that skill, the practice, the day in and the day out, cutting our teeth, skinning our knees, doing all of those activities. That's what makes us excellent. I used to play basketball as a kid until all of the other women outgrew me and I was the little squirty person on the team, but I did it as long as I could and I was scrappy and I made what I had work, right? And I practiced harder than everyone and I showed up at the boot camps, and I think that I took that skill and that determination from being a kid and I take that to business and I say, why can't I do this, right? If everyone's saying no, I'm gonna keep trying. If I really feel this in the core of who I am as a human, maybe it's meant to be, I just need to try a different angle. I need a new approach. I just need to be a little more seasoned in this. And then all of a sudden it clicks and all of a sudden it's working. And so I just think that continual edging out of how can I just become the very best version of myself, my company, how can my product be even more competitive than it is right now? And just the creativity to think of, if I have people coming at my left, how can I pivot, go to the right, how can I move faster, slow down, and just knowing that tempo, that takes having been in it for a while and takes seasonality in your skill in your company. So.
And I think one of the other big things is having a team around you. My biggest thing of getting to where I have been in my business is having, obviously I'm a CPA, so I don't need to hire a CPA, but definitely advise hiring a CPA, but also your lawyer and your banker are the key ones that you should definitely have in any business on your team. Mm-hmm. The other ones is who is the person you're gonna call in the middle of the night when everything is crashing around you. Yeah. Because we've all been there too as business owners where it's like the weight of it and the overpressing fear, especially if you have employees, of being like, how am I going to make payroll? How am I going to make rent? How am I going to do the next thing? And having that sounding board of that person that you can call and talk with about what is going on, am I losing it? When the doubt comes in, who are you going to call? And having those specific people and having that network around you to be able to help lift you back up and come alongside at times, I think that has been the most imperative thing in having a successful business, is kind of having 3 to 4 key people that you can always reach out to and always talk with, and be able to bring up these kind of instances, or like with your banker, to be able to say, hey, we do plan on doing a lot of this funding. If you wait until the last minute, it's going to be really hard to get it done. But if you've built these relationships, they're going to step forward and come alongside you and help when you need it. And so that's always a big thing we talk with our clients about, is like, who's on your team? Who is that person you call at 3 a.m.? And what's your relationship with your banker, with your lawyer, and making sure you have those key people in place.
One more question then. So when we talk about supporters and those folks that you're gonna rely on in the good times and in the bad times, who has been most pivotal for you? And was that another woman? Was that a gentleman that you worked with? Who's been the biggest supporter of you? I'm gonna go to you first.
I mean, honestly, I'd have to say my husband. And I think that the choice you make in your partner is the biggest decision that you can make, and you have to choose wisely. And I feel very lucky that I chose wisely after being engaged, and that didn't work out. And then I met him, and every time I've said something, it's like, I think I'm gonna do my own thing and start my own business. And his response was, okay. And then I said, I think I'm gonna draw again. And he said, okay. And I said, I think I'm gonna write children's books with my birds. And he said, okay. And so it's just kind of that never-ending, like, I can be me in different ways. And I think for me, having that person that not only calls me on my stuff, because there are times where, like, I was super itchy and scratchy one Friday because I'm like, I'm in back-to-back meetings, and he just looked at me and said, who's doing your calendar today? And I said, well, yeah, it's me. So he calls me on my stuff, but then also, I want to fly, he lets me fly. And so I think having people that let you change and become who you are supposed to evolve into is super important. And I think that goes for friends, for peers. Like, we are all so much more than who we are in this moment. And the people that let you flex and grow, that is who you want to keep in your circle.
How about you, like corporately at Bridgewater?
I think for me personally, I've been fortunate enough to have some really great leaders in my career that have helped push me and help me see my potential. And now I'm, trying to do the same for other folks there as well. I think just to echo kind of off of what Nikki and Heather both said too, it's so critical to have a team and a network. And there's peer networking groups. I know we were at a speaker not too long ago, and she was talking about having a personal board. I don't think I'm at the level to have a personal board yet, but I definitely have my personal confidants, and I have others in the banking space that I do rely on really heavily. We're talking and texting all the time, best practices, strategies, and that sort of thing. So having a sounding board is really critical, and sometimes it's just, I don't know how I'm going to get to pick up my kids tonight. So any advice on kid Uber yet? I know it's been talked about. And so just having, like what Nikki said, from a business perspective, a CPA, a banker, a lawyer, and then personally having a network that you can rely on, bounce ideas off of, and it goes back in, both ways.
I feel like every podcast I'm on asks this question in a more direct way, like, are women good supporter of women? Who's been a bigger supporter for you? Is it men or women? And, my answer is, I think it depends on the person. It's not about gender. I have worked when I was in consulting, I worked for amazing male partners who pushed me and helped me grow. In healthcare, I was at Health Partners for 15 years as a CFO, and 7 of the 8 top positions there are held by women. And it was open the door, pull you up, move you forward, not at the expense of men. There just happen to be a lot more women. And so I think it's a lot more about who you work for. And with my clients, I always advise them, you get close to that person who's standing in your way. And if you can't, move on. Like, life is just too short to work for people that don't promote you and your skills and what you have to offer. So with that, we're going to open it up for questions. And sky's the limit. So this hand first.
I just have a question for Nicole. You work in the cannabis industry. As an entrepreneur, are there more highs than lows?
Good one.
I will tell you, like, one of the first events that I went to, and I invited a bunch of my cannabis clients to, and we're like walking around, they had samples. I'm telling you, the swag at cannabis conventions is pretty good. And it was one of those conscious decisions. I ate an edible, and my client looked at me and goes, well, I didn't know you partook. And it gave me that second of doubt of being like, but I was like, it is legal. I would go have a drink with the client, so what is the difference on this part? So it's like you're kind of running that line on that side of it. And then the other part of it, though, is obviously 280E. I mean, it did come out. I don't think, I'm not as optimistic as a lot of people are that it's going to be reclassified, and if it is, it's going to be medical. But 280E puts a very, very strong disadvantage to cannabis business owners because they pay usually it's between 50 to 70% in tax. And a lot of them don't know this. And so they're going into this industry not even knowing what their tax consequences are going to be. And so a lot of it is the education around what 280E is, how do you set up your entity, and helping them, guide them through that.
It's funny, the swag bags don't usually make it all the way home.
You had a question?
If you had a chance to go back to corporate America, and I know, Katie, you're in the bank, but you can apply this to you too. But if you had a chance to go back to corporate America, they offer you billions of dollars, a 10-year vesting program, everything's weighted to the end. Would you go back to corporate America and you have to remain in the bubble for which you exist today?
No.
Absolutely not.
That didn't take long.
No.
No.
I would say I might. I might because my experience there was good. And I think a lot of people run from corporate and start their own thing because they're leaving something. I left more for the desire to create something that I thought didn't exist as opposed to leaving something. And I think that's all about mission and culture and what we're building. I was on the care delivery side, not the, most people know Health Partners for Insurance. I had nothing to do with that. I was really on the hospital and clinic side and working a lot with physicians, and that was very enriching and valuable. Anybody?
No, to be fully transparent, I was never in the corporate side. I worked within small businesses for 10 years before I elected to create my own small business. So although I find it fascinating and half of my clients are executives, what I hear is they are on this gerbil wheel and they have no choice or say in what their day entails and what their tasks entail. And those are some of the things that I enjoy most about being a business owner is what do I want to focus on and what can I create and where can I really add value and what can I build? And you don't really get a lot of those things within a larger company. Now, again, we can always be learning. So if it was the right opportunity and I didn't have equity in a business like I do today, potentially because if you need to learn a skill and that's the only place to learn it, maybe potentially worthwhile for someone to do that. And I see a lot of people transitioning actually inversely out of corporate America to start their own business for the reasons we're describing.
If you're in the corporate jet, the mansion in Cancun,
That's not.
Well, I think, it reminds me before I started my job, I worked at Verizon, and I had a pretty good experience at Verizon. And someone reached out to me when I was in between jobs and described this job. It was going to pay twice as much as it was a job I'd already done, but it was going to pay twice as much. And he used the words loyalty program and CRM, and my heart just sank. And that was the moment that it was like, this isn't about the money. And I think there's a conversation around what is enough? What is enough money? And when I got laid off in 2019 for the third time, my husband and I did the exercise of how much money as a team do we need to make to live the life we want. That gives you freedom. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a lot of people that could live a great life on 60 grand, on 80 grand. And I think we make choices. Mm-hmm. And what is enough for your life? Because what you're talking about is like money, 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 all the things. And what is the cost of that? And for me, that Verizon conversation was like, oh, this isn't about money anymore. It's actually about what's gonna light me up from the inside out. And I've been tent camping before. Like I can do hard things.
And I would agree with that same thing. I've laid off a couple times, and people feel like having that corporate job is a safe bet, but I'd rather bet on myself and be like, I've been laid off, I've been in that situation when the market crashed in 2008. I mean, we made nothing after working at a corporate job. And I was like, having that experience and then knowing that that it's on me to pay the bills and it's on me to bring in the money, I do better with that. And also I would not be able to take instruction well from somebody else at this point would be the other. I just know I would fail miserably at corporate as well, so.
I think we talked a little bit about this, but the creative aspect. So the Speakers Collective that we are part of really came from an unmet need in the marketplace for event planners, not necessarily just for a luncheon like this, but for an event. I was talking to somebody who planned events for Speakers Bureau, and they said, yeah, when you have a panel, then you gotta get everybody together. That 1 hour slot becomes not just get one keynoter on stage. You gotta get the panel together and get them organized and find them and all the things. And I was like, well, that sounds really fun to me. I know some really talented women. I'll just make up my own thing. And that's how the collective came to be, was this creative outlet to meet a market need. How many corporate jobs allow you just to say, in a week's time, I'm going to put together something totally different that sounds really fun to me, and I'm going to bring my friends from all over, network friends, to meet this need. And so I think there's that creative aspect that until you really get to the top where you're the CEO or the chief strategy officer, or that level of creativity is not as accessible. Other questions?
You spoke a little bit earlier about maybe moving on from imposter syndrome and actually embracing the ability to say, I got this, I'm good at this. And I'm curious, we talk so much about imposter syndrome, but I do also see that for many of us females, it's really hard to own when we're really good at something. And it seems like we're bragging, and I think that there might be some differences in judgment for when we might say that we're good at something versus when our counterpart, right? I'm just curious how any of you have kind of handled that and really own the things that you are good at.
Yeah. That's a really great question, and that's something I personally think about every day, because I think there's, unfortunately for women, there's a fine line between being, a bee and being confident, right? And so thinking about that is something that I know I think about every day. What I try really hard to do in my space at Bridgewater is make sure I have buy-in from my peers. And so I ask a lot of questions. So I might know the answer, but if I can ask questions and we can, as a group, kind of get there, that tends to work well for me. But I think just having the buy-in, and then from a leadership perspective, leading with some empathy has been really helpful for me. So instead of coming in like a bull in a china shop, like, I got this, everybody's gonna listen to me, I know I'm right. I mean, I tell my husband I'm right all the time. He doesn't always agree with me, but so I don't do that. Try not to do that at work as much. But I think just having the buy-in from folks around you, so that they know, because I think when you know, and getting people around you to see that, and leading with a little bit of empathy helps, I think, the perception lessen a little bit from being that, the B word, to knowing what you're talking about.
It makes me think of, you guys know Abby Wambach, and she wrote that book, Wolfpack. So she talks about running or pointing. So when she scored a goal in soccer, she pointed to everyone who helped her get there. And when someone else scored a goal, she was the first to run and congratulate. So I think about it like that. So even when you are the one being honored, it's like, actually, none of us got here on our own. And then always, especially for women, you got to have your hype women around you. And who are you hyping? Because that stuff comes back around. So, and I know it's not necessarily owning it in the way that maybe you're asking. And it's hard, especially as a Midwesterner. Like, I was taught, you're humble, you do good work, you keep your head down, and your work speaks for itself. So I think there's also a Midwestern Norwegian thing happening. But this idea of running or pointing has been one that has served me well.
Thanks for being my hype.
Yeah, I got you.
I would say for me too, it was, honestly, when Trisha said that, I literally thought, at what point will I hit that I feel like I can own that spot? I also like the book, The Gap and the Gain. I will admit I stopped reading because I couldn't focus on, I'm always a person, I only see the gap. I have a really hard time seeing what the gain is. And it's something that I've been trying to focus on, and kind of being there's parts that I know that I can own, that I do well. I'm also very open about saying, no, I want to hit this certain revenue. I want the money. I want the power, which I know is a really dirty thing typically for women to say. It's one of those, they're like, oh, how can you say that? My husband is our primary caregiver for our children, and that also throws people off a lot. And the amount of times he's been offered a job when he tells people that he's a primary caregiver is amazing. It's nobody offers stay-at-home moms that kind of stuff, but to stay-at-home dads, they'll make those kind of comments. And so it's one of those things that I look at and say, how do I take where I'm sitting and be in that power, or be in that spot of saying, no, I have gotten here, I have known what it is. And so it was one of those two that resonate with me, of kind of being when do you get to that spot?
think another mental model is, and I had a business coach who shared this with me, that you're always perfectly enabled to help the person that you used to be. So when I talk to leaders, I did manage a $4 billion portfolio and $200 million of reinvestment every year, and that made me who I am. And so leaning into your experience and using that to help somebody else instead of to bolster yourself, I think is a really different, and to the extent for those of you who are, thought leaders or, think tankers, using your knowledge to put more thoughts and new ideas into the marketplace instead of just bolstering yourself. I will say social media and the thought leadership part has been harder for me. And when I started to look at it that way, I've just got something to say from my experience, and you can love it or not love it, but I'm just trying to put it out there for good, for others to learn from or advance from. That's helpful. Do you want to take that question too?
Yeah, so I think it's different when it is a necessity for you to be excellent in the role that you are. So in my team, we subscribe to, we are specialists, not generalists. So each one of my partners plays a different role than I do. So the buck stops with me when it comes to making sure the plan is on point, making sure I understand that family's personal financial statement in and out, and I can address any question. And so I think it's very different when you are required to be the person on your team that owns that element, because you're going to show up, and I'm not even thinking about, boy, let me brag about this. I'm just thinking about, how do I serve that client in the most excellent way, help them answer their questions. And to me, that helps quiet the noise in my head when the voices might say, well, you're not good enough. I go back to my brag bag, and we don't get thanked a lot being financial advisors. We just don't. The market's up and people want to talk about how much more could it have been up. The market's down and they want to talk about why is it not up. And that's okay. And that's part of what I signed up for, and I'm fine with that. But when we do get a thank you, when we do get a recognition of, wow, I was really able to help my family through this guidance, and I really feel free and I feel at peace. You take those parts of those client experiences and you put that in your heart, and you focus on that more than you focus on, am I the best at this? Because I know I'm exceptional, because I'm helping people break through problems and I'm giving them strategies and solutions that they're asking for. And at the end of the day, that's where my focus needs to lie.
So most of you have been both employee and now employer. How do you take into account if you're treating your own employees not so that since you do both world, whereas how to treat them differently? Because when I used to work for a big corporation, always my boss was also an employee, my employee for all his life or her life. So the way he treated me didn't really satisfy. So how do you deal with that now that you know both worlds, with specifically with your employees?
Start with Nikki.
So when I first started, my business partner at the time, he was actually my employer first. And so when I came on board as partner and we launched the firm how it is now, it was very intentional on some of the changes I made. One of them being, I really hate raises and bonuses. As an employee, I hated that I had no clue how I could actually make them better. I didn't know how I could increase my own personal wealth. I didn't know what's the formula to get to this bonus. And once I saw behind the curtain, it was literally being like, well, we have this is what we paid her last year, so we're just gonna up it 2% this year. And I was like, well, how did that number even get started in the first place? And so having that transparency around it. The other big change that we made was, CPAs are typically known to work insane hours during tax season. Our firm, in the first year of launching, we cap all of our CPAs, all of our tax people at 50 hours. I'm like, for one, I wouldn't want somebody working on my tax return after they've worked 80 hours and they're trying to put numbers in, because it's gonna come out wrong. But more of that, looking at the focus of there's a life and there's a person outside of here, and having that kind of focus back on my team is crucial to why I want to own a business, is to be able to bring up others, to be able to help other women who are in the industry, but also trying to change that whole thing of being like, people don't have to work crazy hours in order to achieve something.
So I have we won't tell you the entire story. It could get awkward and maybe be a little litigious, but anyways, I ended up hiring my sister. Okay, let's talk about employees and the strangeness of working with families. So I think when I think about employees and the fact that it got to be the person it was, I think about how she's able to put food on the table and help her son and just take some of the stress off of what being an employee can be. And every day, because she's my sister, we can have that kind of candid dialogue of what are you struggling with, which is kind of just this unique thing that most employees and employers don't get to have. So I'm in a very unique space where I get to really ask her, and I know she's going to be fully forthright of this is working for me. And then the other thing that we did from the beginning was I was very clear on the expectations, and I set out the roadmap, and I said, here's what's going to take. I want you to excel. I want you to make a 6-figure income. If I'm doing well, I want you to be able to participate in that. And she expressed where she wanted to go, but I laid it all out, and I said, the sky's the limit. You how fast do you want to learn? And she just dove right in. And so I think you give them an opportunity to shine and see how far they can go. And then one more thing, sorry. I always subscribe to what can you delegate and then stepping back, right? And delegation doesn't mean control. Delegation means letting go and see how they create and they problem solve and they ideate. And it might, as long as the result is there and they're doing things above the board, still worthwhile. And you could end up with this really great solution that you implement across your company because you're giving them the freedom to participate.
Was there a question over here? I think there was, yeah.
Just the last question. Do you feel that I'm a film producer, our company mission is to entertain, inspire, and save lives? Do you feel that as women who are in the entrepreneurial space and business world, do you feel that your personal mission or the company mission needs to align with a more emotional place than, say, corporate? How do you reconcile that? Or am I nuts?
No, you're not nuts. I think that's the only way it works because it's not easy. And especially I'm on my own. I don't have employees, which means I probably have less headaches sometimes, but it's also super lonely and it's hard. And there are days where it's like, oh boy, getting paid every other week would be nice. And so it has to come from the heart. Otherwise, I really don't think it would work.
Yeah.
I think we have to give ourselves permission to do that, which is so silly, but for some reason we need that. So thank you very much for coming. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Very true.
All right, thank you everybody for being here. Let's give the panelists a round of applause. Doubt to Dominance 2.0, we'll have it on brimacombe.com shortly. Feel free to come up and ask any additional questions that you might have. And remember your sticker for your parking pass, and look forward to seeing you in September. See ya.